All right, so some words of investing wisdom. There's our friend, Warren Buffett. Look at market fluctuation as your friend rather than your enemy. Profit from folly rather than participate in it. It's easy for him to say because he bought Goldman Sachs back in, I think it was 2009, and he got a fabulous deal. You know, they gave him 10% preferred stock, and he got warrants at a fabulous price. So when he buys stuff because he's got so much, he can get these great deals. So he pretty much assures himself he's not going to lose money. So that's why he's always smiling. And Peter Lynch, I like this one. If you watch a basketball game, at the end of the game, the score is 105-95. No one says, wait a second, in the third quarter you lost 28-18. What was the story in the third quarter? So that's, wait till we get to the, closer to the end of the period, the bull market, the bear market, and see where we are. And then Sir John Templeton. And this is the hardest thing for most people to do. When everybody's selling to buy, or when everybody's buying to sell. This is the toughest thing. And I think my husband Doug likes to quote him about, you buy when there's blood in the streets, something like that. And lastly, Jim Rogers, it's learning to listen to the gloom and doom at bottoms and question it, and to the exaltation at tops and question this as well. So he says that's what makes for a sharp investor. So today there's doom and gloom about Europe, China having a hard landing, Europe falling off a cliff, the fiscal cliff in the U.S., and this too shall pass. Might not be this month or this year, though, but the system will cleanse. That will happen. Market forces will cleanse, and so it's important not to get too giddy in bubble times or too gloomy. So deleveraging is a long, drawn-out process. That's what we looked at with the consumer debt that's now at the very end started going down. That's going to take a while. It's going to take a long time. It's a long, drawn-out process. Europe is definitely a wild card. We'll see what happens there. I, for one, don't think it's going to, go under, personally. They'll just print. So that's the thing. And that's what we're seeing, this summer. The ECB is printing money to bail out Spanish banks. Japan is printing money. It's interesting. Japan is trying to buy back its bonds to put money out into the market, but the banks don't want to sell them back to the government. So they're having some issues there. We have negative yields right now. What that means is you lose purchasing power because you're getting so little interest in your savings and so forth. Anybody that has a savings account or money market. And here's a quote I like. It says, "Zero interest rates are like antibiotics. The effectiveness wears off over time. You need to take more and more to achieve less and less, and eventually they stop working." That's kind of what could be an issue here with all of the printing and so forth. Most of my clients here, we have some money in gold for many people, some of the precious metals, and that's been kind of struggling a little this year. But there's some things that have been happening that I just want to point out. One of the things is there's called a Basel III Accord, where basically the governments got together and said, okay, what can banks hold in their capital reserves, kind of like their collateral for debt? And it's pretty much government bonds, which are part of the problem with the banks, like in Spain, because they own Spanish debt, and the Spanish debt is becoming worth less and less. Same thing with Italy. But they are hinting that they're going to start allowing corporate bonds and gold to be used. And for the first time since 1964, the last 2 years, central banks are buying gold. So that is something that's interesting. Actually, today, I read in the Wall Street Journal that Turkey has allowed its banks to use gold now to fulfill their capital reserve requirements. So there's one country. There will be more because their banks, they don't want them to get so stuck with the sovereign debt. That's not the answer. Some other things that are happening are, one thing that's interesting is, at least to me, all the issues we have going on over in Iran. And, we have sanctions against them. So we're not buying their oil. European countries aren't buying their oil. But other countries are. But they don't want them using U.S. dollars to buy because they can't use the U.S. dollars. So countries are starting to buy with gold, too. So it's starting to become a currency, which is very interesting. Yeah, and actually I was reading today in Portugal, people have been selling their gold. People that are out of work are selling their gold jewelry to be able to pay their rent and so on and so forth. Vietnam has a huge, people use gold to buy homes and so forth. They don't use the currency because the currency's been going down because they have high inflation over there. So it's just very interesting the times we're in right now. And remember, the U.S. is still a great country. We have creativity, We have free enterprise here, and we have innovation, and so don't forget that. I hope you enjoyed listening to Melissa Motz, and if you have a friend or relative who is considering their financial options, please feel free to invite them to accompany you to one of our upcoming events. Visit our website at www.motzwealthmanagement.com. That's M-O-T-Z wealthmanagement.com for the most up-to-date listing of these events. Over the years, many of my clients have asked me to speak with a friend, relative, or colleague concerning private financial management. I consider it an honor and a privilege and have been happy to accommodate those wishes. For your future reference, I want you to be aware of the standards by which I comply with such requests. First, confidentiality is the cornerstone of my business. Each of my client relationships is distinctly separate and totally private. Second, thoughtful and courteous service is guaranteed. This is a people business. Finally, I will never give advice and counsel to a client without thoroughly understanding his or her needs. Please contact us at 215-513-6240 or send me an email at Melissa, M-E-L-I-S-S-A, at motzwealthmanagement.com. Melissa Motz is a registered representative, securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Melissa Motz is an investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Motz Wealth Management and Cambridge are not affiliated.